Hello. I believe we're live. Please let me know if any of my audio or sound in general is having issues. I don't often do these things, but I am glad to be back. Uh, Showing off a project that I've been working on for uh, probably a couple months now. In the past couple weeks, relatively heavily trying to get what initially I thought was going to be the 1.1 version or version 1.1 of my Nova RPG system for Foundry VTT. Well, after that length of time, what I ended up with was something that looks a lot more like version 2. Uh, with the amount of changes, if you were to look at the previous version and what I'm about to kind of show off and show you, if you were to look at them, it would almost look like two different games. Um, but before I get too much ahead of myself, um, this this stream is intended to be a general overview of the Nova RPG system as I have implemented it in Foundry, um, as well as a very light introduction to the game itself. I mean, probably just by me giving a few examples of how things work on actor sheets and whatnot, you'll probably know how it works. It's a very rules-like game. It's a lot of fun. It embodies a lot of what I think the best parts of tabletop RPGs are, and that is getting friends around a table, telling ridiculous stories about cool stuff that their 8 foot tall exosuit did. And if that doesn't sound fun, yeah, I'm not sure what to say. That is we would not get along. I but but yeah, I came across Nova. I was introduced to it by my now wife, who I've recently gotten married. Had an absolutely wonderful ceremony. But anyway, my wife came across this system several months ago, late last year, and I took one look at it and said, "That is cool, and it is rules light enough to actually give it a shot and implement into Foundry." And it has been an absolutely wonderful experience, both learning how to build a system, and I think a decent one as I look back at it, uh, as well as getting more familiar with Nova itself. Um, so let's see. I had a tiny little I had a tiny little script to keep me on track here. Um, but first, right off the bat, I wanted to just give a little bit of context for what the system is. And forgive me if I don't hit um, every point or name exactly correctly. I'm relatively new to the system, having only run really a few playtests here and there to test out the system as I'm building it. Um, Looking forward to a lot more though. So anyway, the general concept is that you are a pilot of an 8, 9 foot tall exosuit that is powered by the sun after, or shards of solar energy after the sun has gone nova and exploded everything in our poor solar system. Um, these sparks, as they are called, are the last bastion against the darkness and um, serve as protectors of of major population centers, explorers, to try and reclaim some of the ancient technology, aggressors when enemy factions are moving in and threatening the peace that they have slowly and painstakingly managed to carve out of the darkness. Um, and as far as the mechanics, it is based on the Lumen system, which is a very simple 2d6 system. Um, sorry, 2d6. It's an XD. It's a d6 pool system. Sorry, and that's what I was looking for. The core mechanic is that you roll a number equal to your attribute, whether that be sun, moon, or shade, which are the three attributes we deal with in Nova. Um, that govern, we'll look at that in a second. But if you have a total of 3 in sun, and this is a sun attribute test, you roll your 3d6 and you look at the highest result um, with the following table 1 through 6 showing you what happened with a failure, and success, both coming with a consequence, which is I like a lot. I like the idea of getting what you want but paying a price for it, rather than just not getting what you want at all, which failure can absolutely mean that. But given 2 or 3 dice, it's going to be pretty rare that you roll an outright failure. So as you can tell right off the bat, this is an action-oriented game where the system itself even wants you to succeed. It is biasing it right off the bat in the player's favor. And it leans into that throughout the rest of the game. That's basically all of the rules you need to know as far as playing the game. Naturally, combat has a couple at most, which I'll get to in just a second. Sun, moon, and shade. What I don't want to do here, sorry, is go through every bit of the rule book explaining this to you. There is a really nice quick start or like preview PDF that the author, Spencer Campbell, let me call him out specifically, has available on his page at his itchy.io page under Gila Games, GILA Games. Highly recommend you Google it, check out that page, and grab the quick start rules, and just flip through and see how this works. The attributes effectively govern big bold moves, calculated, or slow or very methodical moves, and quick and reactive moves as kind of these 3 different areas of sun, moon, and shade. And your sparks will use those attributes to get through the missions that they end up going on to recover food, find technology, secure a sunwell from an encroaching Corvus scouting party, whatever that happens to be. Naturally, you have health and fuel. Fuel is effectively mana, your spell slots, which you use to do all your cool stuff. And in combat, all that happens is all of the players go, and then all the NPCs go, or rather, as many NPCs as there are players at the table. So each player will move and do a thing, and 9 times out of 10, that thing is using a power, which uses fuel, and you do a really cool thing, and you blow away the silly hellions that stand in your way. So, I want to put up this cool bit of art. I think all of this, it's cool to think about and talk about, and I think that really drives a lot of the game. But really, that's all there is to the rules as far as Nova's concerned. So let's take a poke at what we have done in the Foundry system. So I'm just going to give just a quick overview of the character sheets that I have, in case you see this, you say cool, and you got to dip and get out of here. I just want to give a quick overview of what we have implemented and how it works. So on the left of the screen, I can make it a little bit bigger. That's what I meant to do. There we go. Okay. So on the left of the screen, we have a spark sheet. This is your player character. Avatar is normal, but the cool thing about Spark Hi, Wasp. Hi, Shinire. Hi, in your library. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I'm glad you could spend a little bit of your evening or very, very, very early morning or leaving work hanging out with me. One of the coolest things in in Nova is how these Spark attach mods or what are called flare mods to their exosuit to change how their powers work. So not only does Universal Donor have her four main powers, uh, transfusion, siphon, blood blade, and cauldron, which each do a thing. She also has these flare mods, which are stored in a separate area of the sheet. But these are effectively the loot of the system. And yes, library, this is your sheet because, as usual, your sheets are great. Um, and so, anyway, one of the cool things about Nova is that there's not really like equipment and loot per se. You go on a mission, you finish the mission, and generally your reward is a flare mod. And these flare mods are, we have an example right here. They come in a couple different flavors depending on what they attach to, but they attach to your spark directly to give you more attributes or small bonuses, or they attach to your powers and change them entirely. For example, this universal donor who is piloting let me find the art, the sanguine, yeah, sanguine spark, um, took the blood-soaked flare, which allows her to attach this to one of her powers, which we can see on her front page, and get an extra bonus that would usually cost something, and it doesn't. And really, that is what most of the actor sheet is. It is your list of powers, your stats, which should be relatively self-explanatory. You have a few to allocate here and there. When you create a character, it's like 4, I believe. So you can allocate up to 4 points between Sun, Moon, and Shade, where they all start at 1. And these bonuses, that was me playing around actually. And then you have and then you have some flare mods called persistent mods, and these are the ones that attach directly to your frame. So we can see that Universal Donor has one of these persistent mods called Mobile Grave. And we can take a quick peek at that. I'm not pulling up the item specifically. We can get to that in just a moment. But Mobile Grave just modifies how well, I guess I will have to check it out real quick, how her supernova works. Just take my word for that at the moment. But that modifies how her special supernova power, which every spark has one, and it just activates when you go to 0 health. Sparks don't die. They are incredibly resilient exosuits that can survive the test of time. So in combat, I don't know if you've ever played the game Warframe, the free-to-play PC and PlayStation game, whatever. Think Warframe when you are kind of imagining and envisioning the over-the-topness that this game really wants. To see. So when saying when Universal Donor goes down, her supernova activates, and she basically locks herself into a steel coffin, and at the start of the next round, she just resurrects. And that is what happened. You literally can't kill her. You can probably slow her down and cripple her, but she is not easily stopped. That is for sure. And anyway, the point was that is just an example of a persistent mod. Something you attach. You have 4 slots that you can see on your character sheet here, and as you get more persistent mods that attach to your Spark. They will simply pop up in the available list of persistent mods that you can attach. Boom. So now we have a cool new Spark mod that doesn't really do anything. It's just attached to the Spark, and it leaves a rainbow trail. Yeah. Wherever you go. Now, if that isn't OP, I don't know what is. So that is just a little bit of the character sheet. We're going to dig into a little bit more of that, where all the fun bits are. This library says, yeah, we played a little play test, and we saw Universal Donor's Supernova go off and off and off, and then we all started realizing exactly what kind of game we were playing. And it wasn't quite what we expected, but none of us hated it, and that is kind of when we started to embrace it. Like, okay, this is supposed to be action-packed and fun. Anyway, looking at the Mpc sheet, you can see that it is a little bit more plain than the character sheets, and that is for a couple reasons. A, the character sheets are cooler in every system. It just is. So they're going to get more attention and more love. But furthermore, as we look at NPCs in Nova, there's not a lot to them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 NPCs, unique NPCs are presented on this page alone. So to that end, the Mpc sheet kind of mirrors that idea. You see, you should be able to see some of the text. I apologize if it's a little bit small, but NPCs have effectively a harm value, which is the damage, the word for damage in this system. So this Eclipser that we're looking at, I'm not sure exactly how much. We'll find out in just a second. It will deal 2 harm. That's just what it does. And it has 3 moves that have names, but even in the PDF document have no mechanical description or implementation. And that's because the name is all you need. On an NPC's turn, they will move and activate and use. They will move and use one of their moves, which could be the same move. Which could be the same. I say move one more time. Which could be the same action, such as pounce and crush. If I was to, as a GM, say this Eclipser beast uses its pounce and crush on you, we all pretty much have a good idea of what that entails. It can probably jump a good distance, not extraordinarily far, but it can probably get a good distance. And I don't know, maybe it'll crush, maybe it'll disable you if it hits really hard, or possibly kind of slow you down as it tugs and gnaws on your legs. That's kind of for the GM to elaborate, but as far as Nova is concerned, that's just what the Eclipser does. And if that pounce and crush move would deal harm, then we do so. And I'm not going to click that button yet, because that's where all the goodies are. And so on this Eclipser's turn, it may use pounce and crush on the nearby Universal Donor and deal 2 harm to Universal Donor. And boom, she would take 2 points off her health, and we move on. There are no dice rolls in combat, which makes this blazingly fast to play at a table, just pen and paper as well. I don't know if you've ever used the average damage rolls in D&D, and a lot of us play online with virtual tabletops, and so it's not that big of a deal, but it's akin to basically using the average damage rolls and attack rolls and damage rolls in 5e. You could have some pretty quick combat if you just didn't touch dice. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot me. Let's see. So that's kind of most of what the NPCs are. They have kind of they have another, the normal ones have another field for variance. And this is one of my areas that I want to improve upon. I want to be able to actually, let me zoom in on this a little bit. Variants are just kind of brief modifications to the main type. And so, oh gosh. So one of the modifications that this Eclipser may have, similar to this example in the book, is +1 health and +1 harm. At the moment, it is just something to record to note if you wanted to put it out to chat. Effectively, you would copy this sheet and make the changes to the heavy Eclipser, if that's the variant you wanted to use. But it would be really cool if you pulled out a bunch of your carvers that have these variants that we see here, and you were able to kind of click a dice roll, and it would pick a random variant and apply the change. That would be pretty neat, I think. But one thing at a time. So, with just the basic NPC and actor, I wanted to give another quick overview of the combat, which I already have one going. So, this is the part of the playtest that library ran for a couple of us. We were fighting these magpies and crows and stuff in a desert canyonous pass. That looks about right. Usually there'd be a couple more. Pull out this crow. Point. Okay, so we have some PCs, we have some NPCs, and it is time for a fight. And so in Nova, it uses sided initiative. It uses sided initiative. So when combat starts and you need to resolve things with fists and blowing things up and missiles and bullets, then you basically, all of the players get to go, and in what order they want. Yeah, that's exactly right. Library mentions that there was one moment in the game where one of the players was lamenting that they needed to, they were like here, and they needed to get across this gap over to this little ledge where some other crows were, and he was like, "Oh no, I'm not going to be able to get over there." And Library, as DM said, you can just jump that. You're a 8-foot tall mech. Yes, you can just jump it. And a light bulb went off in that player's mind. I saw it. It's like, wait a minute, I'm just a mech. I can do mech things with ridiculous mech abilities. Yes, I would like to hop over this near gap, and that's kind of as technical as Nova would get. So combat starts, and all of the players get added to initiative, and this is no different than using Foundry and adding tokens to the combat tracker using the toggle combat state. But Raven, you're not supposed to be here. You're not a PC. How'd you slip in? But you can see that it is, if you're familiar with Foundry VTT at all, this tracker is significantly different. And the whole purpose here is just to provide a way for your players to indicate that they are done. So I don't have a player view pulled up. One, because it's a lot of windows, and two, because I don't want to push my luck on beta code. So if you're your player controlling universal donor and you see this combat tracker, you would just see the little check mark for your token. And all that check mark does, after we begin combat, thank you, helpful error message, you can't end your turn before combat has started. So once we have started combat and the players begin to go, and they choose amongst themselves who wants to go. I mean, half the time they could all go at the same time and it really wouldn't matter because there's very few die rolls. It's easy to resolve how things would happen. But Universal Donor takes her turn and she does a move and she does a power and it blows away this magpie. And that's her turn. So all she does is click, check, I'm good on the combat tracker. And once all the other players have done the same thing, it basically indicates that they're done. The red highlight automatically switches over to the GM, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because the GM has no tokens here. This is another cool part of Nova, is that, okay, 3 players took a turn, so I, as the GM, will activate 3 NPCs. Doesn't matter what they are, that's just what I'm going to do. So I look at this crow, and as I see, I'm testing very long, unbroken, unbroken strings. They overwhelm with crows sounds like a pretty cool move just to open it up with. So I'm going to have this first crow as the DM overwhelm with crows. And what does that mean? It means that I'm going to let every other crow unit also move with him. And we're just going to do this. And that's his turn, that's his action. That's his turn, that's his action. So to indicate that an NPC has gone, we right-click his HUD and add it to the combat tracker. And so now we see that 1 crow has taken its turn. It's done everything it's wanted. That's all. So I'm going to let Typhoid over here sweat it out. And the Raven's going to do a thing, and it moves over, and it attacks Voyager, and poor Voyager takes some damage. I don't know why that didn't pop up with floating text, but poor Voyager takes some damage, and the Raven has taken its turn. Boom. And then the Magpie does something, and it's taken its turn. So now I have 3 NPCs that have gone to the 3 sparks, and so I can end my turn as the GM, and we start over. So we do this. But here's where we get into some of the cool stuff. So at some point, your sparks are going to kill people. It's inevitable. But they're going to kill these guys. And so in retaliation, Voyager just deleted this Raven in front of him, part of the Corvus Dominion faction. Just deleted the Raven. Cool. That Raven's out. Switch back to my tracker. That Raven is dead. It has the DM could think of it as taking its turn, and so we can add him to the tracker. If he was already in the tracker, this would be done automatically, but you notice that that its icon has appeared in another place in the combat tracker, and that is the drops to roll. When you kill something in Nova, and just like in looter shooters everywhere, there is a chance for loot to pop out of the enemy. And loot in this sense means health or fuel, both of which are extremely important and scarce resources that you don't have a whole lot of. A very, very tanky spark may have 8 hit points, 9 if they're really pushing it. Not a whole lot to work with, and they would only have maybe 2 or 3 points of fuel. Meaning they could only use 2 or 3 powers before they're just kind of puttering around the battlefield trying to body block and do what they can without their solar-powered shenanigans. Well, this is how you get them back. You kill enemies, and they drop things. So I'm actually going to pop this out so we can see. And what happens here is we say all 3 NPCs have taken their turn, good to go, and now we have drops to roll. So I can click on his icon directly, and its token is automatically hidden, and a small drop roll gets put in chat. It shows that it rolls a 1d6, and very similar to the success failure, the fuel, the enemy drops have a similar table. It's like 1 and 2 or nothing, and uh, anyway, I won't be able to find it. 1 and 2 are nothing. 3 and 4 are fuel. 5 and 6 are health, or something like this. In this case, we rolled a 6 and got a health, so that's pretty cool. Here's where we start getting some of the fancy stuff. After all of our drops have been rolled, so I don't have any more tokens in my drops to roll section in my combat tracker. The round is now the sparks will claim those drops. So basically, they are picked up instantly. We don't have to fool around with like walking over to their square and using an action or something. It just happens. So this health pops out of an enemy, and the sparks go, okay, who needs it? And Universal Donor says, I've taken some hits. I could use the health. And so all she has to do is, with her token selected, click the claim drop button. And 1 health will be added to her spark. A small message comes up confirming it for everybody to see that, okay, Universal Donor grabbed this drop, and the button has been grayed out. It is unusable because that drop has been claimed. Combat continues on until all of the NPCs are dead. And that's basically the overview of the system and the implementation, or the system and the sheet, and just the general feel of the of combat and how to work with things. Yes. Yeah, library sat through some of the more painful playtesting periods where, let's see, the enemy move card. Imagine this was all we had. It's just text being spat out to chat. And it was crude, but hey, I could attach mods to each other and they would print out their description alongside each other. So that was kind of cool. It was a lot of work for me. But yeah, a lot of work has gone into making the tabletop play try and oddly keep up with the IRL table play, the in-person play. It is quite the first version of this system is quite likely that in-person play was faster, just because having to open a sheet and type in -1 takes a lot longer than just scribbling a number on a sheet of paper, or saying, okay, who wants health? I do. Okay, you got it, and moving on. So I'm trying to keep up with the table play speed with this update. But let's take a look at some of the cooler parts as I talk about that. Some of the cooler parts of the new update to the powers and the mod system. This is what I'm really excited about. I think this is really exciting. It was exciting to play with as I made it. It's just been a lot of fun. So to do this, we're actually just going to quickly create and I've done Spark a couple times. Voyager. Somebody built a Voyager, if I remember correctly. Warden was pretty cool. Pox I've seen. Grim, why not? You're weird. Actually, he might be a bad example. Do you have any damaging? Yes, okay. Yeah, he does damage. Okay. So we're just going to quickly make Grim here. And my name is going to be Grimace as I drive the Grim exosuit. So to make a spark, your stats start at 1 and you get 4 points. I don't exactly know how Grim likes to lean. Some sparks kind of lean into 1 stat, or kind of 2, kind of lets you pick, do I want to move more into sun or more into moon to do more damage here or more targets or whatever. This looks like, yeah, it doesn't, equal to your shade. Okay, it looks like I might give shade a little bit of extra. So I'm going to put 2 points into shade
for a total of 3, 1 into moon, and one into sun. Boom, done. As far as health and fuel, you get 8 points to split between them. Grimace, I believe, he's kind of a necromancer, puppet master build. So he wants things to be dying away from him and fighting other living things away from him. So I'm going to bias a little bit more towards fuel because of that. So of the 8 points, I will use, let's see if I use 4. So we'll distribute 4 each, and that'll get us to 6 and 6. And why not? Let's go up to 8 on fuel and 4 on health. So need to be very careful of who I'm nearby, because any hit or two is just going to kill me. But other than that, I've got fuel to raise thralls all day. My pilot, obviously, Honey Badger is piloting this mech, and I think in the game itself, you actually your pilot is distinct from the exosuit they drive. I mean, they are very much, they kind of come as a package, but you can get out of your exosuit and you can go and have dinner with your, I don't know, you have a wife, you might have a wife, you have family, or I don't know, are you a 16-year-old, what's the word I'm looking for? Words, I tell you. A 16-year-old just spark genius, and you ride these things like you were born in one. Maybe you still got school. I don't know. You got homework to deal with. I think there's a lot of freeform to explore there. But enough of that. Let's make some powers. So I hope this is readable. It'll be good enough. Its passive is called Raise Dead, and I'm not going to copy and paste all of this out. I'm just going to get the kind of the most important bits and jot this down. And make a thrall, 1 per round, and this is going to take forever, so I'm not going to do this. Deal damage equal to shade. Forgive me here, I don't actually want to transcribe all of this, but we can already show an example. So this Raise Dead ability says when somebody dies, you can use your as a passive, so it doesn't use anything. It immediately come back as your thrall, and you can do stuff with them. And you can have up I can have up a maximum number of 3. That's pretty cool. And it says that they are revived with 1 health and act with your powers. Thralls cannot move. Okay. So Raise Dead itself doesn't need a whole lot. It's just a thing that happens, and you would get a placeholder token, or the DM would just track it. Actually, you know what? This is a great example. So the raven in front of you dies, and you as Grimace immediately resurrect it. This would be a great use of the status effect, the automatic status effect application I've implemented here. So each one of these powers, which have a default icon of a little lightning bolt, just to kind of show that it's power. As usual, you can change this to absolutely anything you want. And each one of these powers, abilities, have what I call harm entry. And so they describe one way they can affect the world, whether they're affecting yourself only, or a target, or your target and yourself, whatever it happens to be, they have a harm entry. And so the way that Raise Dead affects the world is by creating a thrall, which deals no harm, has no cost because it is a passive ability. It can target 1 enemy. And was there a range limitation? Of course, no, of course not. No range limitation. It just happens. And what we want to do to indicate this is, that's the one status I didn't put in. I wanted to put in enthralled. Did I do that? No, I wanted to do enthralled. So we're going to use we can change which status we apply, and I will use infected. Seems reasonable. They're your thrall. They have been infected. Enemy acts with my powers now. Cool. So that's just a little bit of note explaining what this harm entry is supposed to do, or to give more context to what we're doing here. So this is pretty neat, and let me just show you how this targeting works. So this is a mess. Let me go back to my overland. Dusk overland with all these handy tokens. Let me get Grimace out on the board. Okay. So say this magpie goes to 0 HP and Grimace's passive procs. I need to figure out why that scrolling text isn't working. Grimace's passive procs. You have to forgive me, I don't have a great icon. It is just this. So what we do is we simply roll raise dead, and it gives us our information, and it shows our harm entry that we created called Great Thrall. What I wasn't doing here was, so before we click this button, this is basically the damage roll you're going to make. If you have, now is when you would target, if you would like to use the automatic targeting features that I've implemented in this system. So when you are using an ability, it will always know the token that used it, or the actor that used it. So you don't have to worry about it knowing you. But if you have, if you select target using the targeting tool, T or Shift T to select multiple targets, your power can be automatically applied to those NPCs, to those enemies, to those tokens, whatever, by their token's owner. So I'm not going to go the route of allowing players to actually directly modify the HP of unowned tokens. The barrier that I don't believe should be crossed. But I will make it very easy so that as long as the player has targeted those tokens prior to using their harm, whichever harm entry they're choosing, the harm entry itself will remember all of those targets. So the GM, and I will show you that in just a second, as the player, click Create Thrall with this magpie targeted. Says the enemy acts with my powers now. So there's no fuel to spend because it's a passive, so we can just ignore that. But apply 0 harm. I'll need to work, actually, that's what's missing. There's a footer that there should be a footer that describes the status effect being applied. So I'll have to make a note of that. Anyway, this apply harm, if you were to, I have nothing selected. If you were to click that, nothing happens because I don't have anything selected. What I have done is in these chat cards, a left click, the default most straightforward option is do the thing with the tokens I have selected. So if you wanted to apply harm to the user's target, you could, as the DM, you could click Magpie and you could click apply 0 harm. Now that dealt no damage, but it gave us the infected status. So now we know, we have some sort of visual reminder that this magpie is under Grimace's control. That was with the selected. So you can do that for any token. So a player uses an ability and says, I hit everybody. And the DM says, okay, and selects everybody and clicks apply harm. And it is applied to everybody. They would take damage if that involves damage, and they get the status effect as we see here. Cool. But why did we target? We targeted such that the DM can simply right-click on the button. You notice these stack. That is also intentional. But the DM simply has to right-click on the button to apply the status effect to the tokens that the user was targeting when they use their harm. It doesn't matter what you have selected. You right click on apply harm and it will apply it to the targeted token. And that works the exact same way with fuel. So if this had a fuel cost and I was the user, I could have my token selected and click spend 0 fuel. It's a terrible example, but you can follow me. You're all adults. Spend 0 fuel. Or with nothing selected, the chat card button knows who the caster is. You simply right click on it and it will spend your 0 fuel from that token that generated the message. So when you're in combat, it's really, you don't have to change your selection, your targets. It doesn't matter. You right click on that button and it will apply all of the changes it can to the targets it's supposed to. And there was a lot of fuzzy language in that. Given an ability, I could easily see a single kind of ability affecting both enemies and friendly, and they kind of just do damage to everybody for some reason. The GM, as the owner of all tokens, can obviously do that. Can right click on that button and it will apply it to everybody that the player targeted. The players themselves also have the option of right clicking that button, and they will apply those changes to any tokens that they own. So in that case, it's usually just their PC token, but the system knows that the player cannot modify an unowned token, so it's not going to spit out a bunch of errors if you're mixing owners. If as a GM, if you target every player and deal 1 harm to every player just has to right click on that 1 harm to say yup, and it's done. I think is wonderful. So that was just a passive. Something that makes a lot more sense is if we were to make an actual active. Ooh, and this is linked, right? Yeah. So let's just let's pick one that possesses pretty straightforward. Yeah, we'll do possess. So we will create this new power called possess, and this says 2 harm to an enemy close range. I didn't really touch on this, but Nova has it just uses 4 range increments of close, near, far, and beyond, where close is melee or just within a few steps. Near is a very short sprint, the other side of a average sized room. Who knows what an average sized room is in RPG? I don't know. But you get the idea. Far is, the length of a football field or something, or the length of something much larger than a room, and beyond is beyond all of that. So the system doesn't care that much, but it gives you these kind of vague, increasing bands. Anyway, deal 2 harm to an enemy within near range. Oh, near range, not close. Near range. Give them a single command that they must obey. This is one of those things that Nova and I think the Luma system in general just says, yeah, DM, what does that mean? And give them a single command that they must obey on their turn. They must obey now. I don't know. What's cool? Now? Okay, cool. We'll do that. And that's how debate should be resolved, I believe. So we now actually have a harm entry, and for this, we're just going to call this damage and command, because that's what this harm entry does. It costs 1 fuel because all powers take 1 fuel. It targets 1 enemy, and it has within near range. So I'm going to admit that the UX isn't great here, and the system, is coded in Foundry, doesn't really care. I have some really stupid ideas for making range finders and overlaying colors for movement distances and stuff like that, and that is absurd. So if that ever comes to fruition, then these boxes are going to mean a little bit more. But basically, maximum range is near. That's all that is. And you know what? The DM was being kind of a jerk, and it's like, no, it's going to do it on its turn, but it's going to use its turn doing your command. A little bit of give and take. Player says, okay, I really just wanted him to smash that guy, but that's fine. Okay, cool. And we move on. So to remember that, I would like to apply a status. Just to remember. And it's going to be locked. They are locked into what I want to do. The names hardly matter. A few of the NPCs have keywords like wound and aura and splash. I don't even think I have that as a status. That's just more of a keyword. There are some keywords in Nova that mean things. These statuses that I've created, I literally just created. I read through the Nova core book, and anytime an effect did something to an enemy, I yanked that adjective. So if it was, if it treats an enemy or makes an enemy exposed, I don't know what that means, but I have a word for it, and so that's how these statuses were made. If anybody has suggestions, if you played a lot of Nova and you run into things that you're constantly doing, please let me know. File an issue on the GitLab, the GitHub. I can, there will be links to, or yeah, just holler at me now. Like, hey, you need this. Anyway, these are easily added to as well by any user with a very, very simple world script. You just append to an array that is in memory and basically always accessible as soon as Foundry breathes. Apply status locked, and we're going to say, okay, fine. Okay, fine. They act next turn. And that just, it just reminds us of how this works. So Grimace is doing his thing, and his turn comes up. He's lost some health because, it happens. He spent some fuel. He does that. And then his turn is up again, and he's like, okay, this magpie has been infected about 5 times. That one's definitely out of here. But this one was giving me the side eye, and it took my fancy earring. That's a no-go. So we are going to say, hey, I'm going to possess that guy, and you don't have to worry about targeting before clicking the button to begin with. Like, oh man, I would like in D&D 5e and MIDI QOL. If you don't have everything set up before you click that button, heaven help you. Not how it works here. You're going to roll an item, which gives you the options, and then before you click one of those buttons, make sure your intention is correct. I feel like that's a little bit of a compromise. So we're going to possess, as Grimace, we are going to possess this magpie. Going to damage and command. And as a little reminder, the player puts in a little snide comment that says, okay, fine, they act next turn. So the DM says, okay, cool. And right click to apply 2 harm, as -2 health floats off of the magpie, and a status is applied. And the player on their side, right click, spend 1 fuel, and their fuel is spent from their actor. Doesn't matter who they have selected, nothing. Doesn't matter. Right click, move on. So that's kind of how the powers work. And you could have more than one harm entry. If this had, some powers get a little bit more complicated, and it's like you choose an effect from the following 3. Each one of those effects might be its own harm entry. We'll see how this works out. I'm not 100% sure how this is going to end up being used in play, if people are going to end up making just more powers, top level powers, or making multiple specific harm entries. I don't know. But it is very flexible. So with that done, let's make a flare mod real quick. So we've seen this harm entry where we can set up a bunch of different traits of this power that do a bunch of different things automatically. What if I was to tell you, you can create flare mods that affect your power? And again, not diving too much into the rules, flare mods can affect any power or a specific power. And the ones on the left, if you can see on the left bottom here, affect any power. These affect a specific power. So when you're creating your mod on your sheet, you also select that. In this case, we're just making a, let's see, I want to do possess. All enemies within close range of possess. Excellent. So we are going to make a power mod that affects only possess, because this is specific to how it works. And what this does, it says, it is called horrified. Enter. It ate the submit buttons. Okay, so horrified says all enemies close to target take 1 harm and cannot move. So that's pretty neat. How do we represent this? So, all enemies close. This actually, I picked one that immediately broke, because this is the thing that I thought about and decided to put to the side for the moment. Effectively, what this mod is doing is it's adding a brand new harm entry into possess. Which is unfortunate, because I don't have the ability to add an entire harm entry. I can modify those harm entries, but I don't have the ability to add one. So let's get a little bit creative with the tools I have at hand. I think we can already work around this. So possessed, it has damage and command. And because it's going to have horrified, we can put a little placeholder here. We can just call it horrified. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here. Not going to do anything else to it. I'm going to have it basically do nothing. Yeah, just nothing. All default stuff. What we're going to do is I'm going to say, okay, let's modify possess such that it deals 1 extra harm and applies a target status. And this drop down with just one option in it took me hours. But you can only override status effects. You cannot apply multiple just yet. So you can override it. So I'm going to override the target status, and they can't move, right? So immobilized. We're getting there. But unfortunately, the way that this works, when I attach horrified here, so now I've actually attached this mod to the possessed power. Now what will happen is, well, actually, let's just show you. It's supposed to add 1 harm and override to the immobilized status. So let me target the magpie again and re-roll my possess. So now we have damage to command and horrified. Now we can see that horrified has been attached, and it prints it out in chat with it to say, hey, remember me? I'm here too. Damage to command. So now we see what happened. We told this mod to add 1 harm to possess. So it went from 2 harm to 3 harm. And we told its target status to override to immobilize. It's not what we wanted to do. It's not it. On the other hand, horrified actually kind of worked. That works, assuming we were actually targeting like he's near, and we say horrified. That costs no fuel, and it applies 1 harm, and they're immobilized. Neat. That's close. So we use this little feature here that looks like it's helpful now. I'm not 100% sure how this is going to be used, but it's apparently already useful. What we're going to do is I'm just going to give possess a placeholder. I really want all of the information to be held in horrified, the flare mod that we have here. I want all the nitty-gritty information there. I don't want to put the horrified specific harm entry into the possess power directly. There's nothing wrong with that, and the way that the harm entries are set up, that is an absolutely fantastic use of the system I've put together. No complaints whatsoever. But I want to try and keep them segregated because I have a very tiny brain and can only keep a few things in my head at once. So let's click this lock button. When I hover over it, it says accept flare mod changes. If I click it, it says not currently affected by flare mods. I have a distinct feeling that's going to do exactly what it says. So I'm going to try the damage and command again, targeting the magpie. 1 fuel, 2 harm. This is exactly what we wanted. Okay, well, what about the horrified placeholder? Target self. Oh, that's an override. It was, we forgot to tell it that the target were, all enemies. Target. So we're going to say add 10. I don't know. All enemies close. I knew as soon as I actually tried to use it, there would be a little bit of rocky spots. Let's see, number of targets, range. Yeah, and I'm going to put range, override, and these are numbers. So close, near, far, beyond, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just going to say range of 1 for close. And let's see what happens, because I've just overridden a bunch of what this harm entry should be doing. Plus 10. It's a mathematical issue, but that works. Target. Basically as many as you want. Can I put... It didn't evaluate that. Did that error out? No. Okay, let's see what happens when I put any. Did not expect that. Those roles should be parsing. They should be trying to evaluate as a number, and plus any does not evaluate to a number. Neat. I might want to reconsider how targets work, but not before this release, I can tell you that. So I'm going to say targets 9. That is just an indicator for as many as you want. But we see how horrified has modified the an awful name, the placeholder harm entry, and not the damage and command harm entry. And that is kind of, that is effectively the full end-to-end of circle, going around in circles, so we're going end-to-end. One of the two. We started somewhere, we might be ending up somewhere else, but the point is that kind of modification is at the core of what I wanted to bring you with this update. The ability to create these items that change property of whatever they're attached to. And to demonstrate that, whatever they're attached to, I'm going to just create another power with a completely different, an absurd damage that's dealing 30 harm at 8 fuel. And we're going to make Horrified also make it cost 0. Just going to make it cost 0. And fuel, and we can put it at a range of beyond with no minimum. And then we're going to attach Horrified to it. Oh crap, I can't. That's because it's already attached to Possessed. So we unattach it from Possessed. We realized that my form rendered the information on, or latched the information on render and wouldn't update dynamically. That's another thing I'm going to have to address. Or say, tough luck, just open up a new window. Effect any. Okay, so now when I open up this, I can attach Horrified to it. See, I wrote this system. I know what I'm doing. So now when we roll absurd damage, we have all of these modifiers affecting it. Sorry, what just happened? Oh, right, I closed the window. To power, boom. Roll that, absurd damage. And we see we're applying 31 harm. And we have 9 self-targets. You have to forgive me, it can't override everything, but now that it can override some things, I should be able to also override the target type, things like that as well. So whether that goes into this update or more likely one in the future, because scope creep is real, will be determined. Anyway, point was, as demonstrated, these mods can hook up to anything that they indicate they're compatible with via these drop downs and the type. Persistent, power, what it affects, these are all game keywords. So I realize I'm going quite fast and using them, assuming you know what I'm talking about. Mods attaching to powers. That is the bulk of what I've done. And I think I'm so excited for these buttons. So excited for these buttons. I can't wait to click with them and play with them. And I don't know. I grabbed I found some example CSS online because I am an absolute pro CSS designer. Found something I like, tweaked it, slapped it in as my buttons, and now that's all I want to do. I just want to click the button. So play game with me. I want to click the button. Let's see. So that's gone through most of. Let me show you just one more example of stuff you can do. You can also reference role data in here like you would anything else. So some abilities may deal harm equal to stun. Your total stun stat, right? Which in this is going to be an absolutely great example for this sweet power. Now does 3 harm, which is stun +1 because of this ability that we've created and modified. But now, create a persistent mod real quick because we can also affect our spark through this list on our rulebook to the left. These persistent mods, say we grab one that, for whatever reason, we grab the +1 stun. And this is, what do they call this? They call this Fury. And it just is +1 stun. So our modifications are, just like we were working with, we just have a different set of words now. We can modify our health, fuel, stun, moon, and shade, which is basically all the properties that a spark has. We are going to modify the stun, and we're going to add 1. So now we can see our stun is 2 + 0. This is supposed to be a bonus field, which can be manually entered. For instance, if you weren't interested in using this modification, or using this mod system like this, and you just wanted to type it in like a sheet, or you got a bonus or something that doesn't quite fit, and you just wanted to type it in. Yeah, do that, please. You type it in. Now, when you roll sun, your total attribute, that's not a great dice for streaming, but your total attribute is now free. And so that was a one-off bonus that you get for being really cool. And then you finish a mission and you get the Fury mod. So as soon as you attach the Fury mod, we see that our sun bonus went up to 2. And I also can't edit it anymore. Because I don't know if any of y'all have had to troubleshoot a D&D 5e character sheet with a slew of active effects from importers and nonsense, and you type a number in a field and it changes briefly to another number, and then it changes to another number yet again and stays there. And you're like, that's not related to what I just typed at all. Because an active effect is modifying the max value that you have changed, but you saw the value after the active effect. And anyway, the logic, it immediately gets weird for what did the user just intend to type in? Did they intend to type in the new total? Did they intend to type in the new base score? I don't know. Who knows? It's an ugly problem. So I say just you can't touch it. If you are touching, if an active effect, which I can actually demonstrate as well, as active effects work exactly the same way. I did deviate a little bit. Don't hate me for those who are familiar with the core layout. I put the toggle on the left because the toggle on the right is far too close to the trash can for my taste. And this is what you care about. If you're coming into this screen, you're like, what's enabled, what's disabled, and I want to enable and disable it quickly. Furthermore, what is this effect? I don't know. I click on the name because that's what you do to open an item card. So I took the same effect with the active effect. We just have one lonely trash can over here on the right. This is only relevant to those who have stared at kind of example Foundry character sheet as long as I have. Anyway, effect. This one's easy. Data. If I can remember what it is, fuel dot max. Let's add 1 to our maximum fuel. Boom. Fuel now goes to 9 and it's grayed out. We disable the effect. It goes to 8. Okay, cool. I can modify it how I need to. Excellent. Everything's cool. We turn back on the active effect and it goes back up to +1 from whatever it happened to be. And part of that was to actually show the stacking effect. They play together just fine. Data dot attributes dot sun dot bonus. We see the fuel became editable, and now the sun, take it all the way off. There it is. The manual 1, the flare mod +1, and the active effect +1 all playing together. And this is how it worked for all of the active effects you can target that are displayed on the sheet. This is how anything that a persistent spark mod modifies. So anything related to your character. Because I don't have to do that with the items because I lazily evaluate the item only when you actually click the harm button. So in this absurd damage button, for example, all I have done with the item is said, hey, what is your name? What are your icons? And what mods are attached to me? Let me get their name and icons. And then I just list out the harm to roll. At that point, when you click that absurd damage button, that is when all the data is latched. That is when all the modifications are computed. So I don't have this kind of, I have to lock you out of these harm entry fields. I don't need to lock these fields like I'm doing with the actor sheet, because you can't really be editing them at the same time anyway. They don't interact except at the very last second when their two numbers get added together. I went off on a tangent about that, and I don't really know why, because I've been just staring at it for so long. I think the last thing I want to do, before I mostly stop talking, if anybody has any questions, or if anybody viewing is in the JB2A Discord server and would like to stop by the Comlink voice channel with questions, or would like to poke at the server themselves, that's totally fine. I fully encourage it. But the last thing that I'm going to show is, while NPCs were not the target for this update, I've already kind of mentioned they still got a little bit of indirect love. They were in the splash zone for love. So they got a little bit on them. And what that meant was they got a harm value, a harm description, and an optional status effect to apply as part of their harm roles. Previously in version 1.0, this was their harm entries were just a plain string that would be output, and the user and the targeted players would type in -1, -2 on their token and go through all that and hope they don't misclick and they can read and they don't miss it, and all the things that go into playing games and living. But what we got here is we have 3 not great labeled, but as soon as you click it once, I think you'll understand what each one is supposed to do. I should probably have some default values. Oh, that does say special, but I bet that doesn't say harm. I should probably note that. Anyway, so we can see that NPCs have similar but much abbreviated abilities because the DM doesn't have to follow any rules. And Nova, the DM says, I've got jump boots, and that character has jump boots. And so that's what they do. They jump boot. So the detail really isn't necessary here. If this Dusk Fang spits adhesive, it's gonna deal 1 close damage to. Oh, your sparks are side by side. It's gonna spit adhesive and kind of splash both of you, so you both take 1 damage, and that's how powers are created on the spot. But anyway, now at least the GM, and this is mainly for the players because players always get all the love in RPGs. But the players get a apply harm button, just like the NPCs would if the players were using an ability. Notice there isn't a spend button because I haven't come across or seen, and I don't think it's the intention for NPCs to really have resources beyond health, and I'm sure half the time not even health really. So I don't they don't have fuel, they don't have resources to spend. There's not much to track for them. I think probably the most complicated thing I've seen thus far is the keyword of aura, and that's just remembering that the Devil Toad has an aura. And with my custom status effects that I've recently added, we click the radiation icon for aura, and so now we can remember. So yeah, these buttons work exactly the same way. Anybody can select a token, click apply 1 harm, and it'll apply the harm. Or if you have everybody selected and you right click, it'll only apply the harm to the token targeted. So if the GM is good about it, then the player again just has to right click apply 1 harm, and even if all players are targeted, it's just going to modify your 1 token, the one you have permission to. That's a lot of words. I believe that I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to show off. The new MPC, the PC sheet, the upgraded items, the attachable mod system, uh, yeah, and the NPC harm entries. Sorry, I was a bit distracted. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, or if they would like to see some functionality that I breezed by, not sure how many we have in chat in the moment. Oh, we have a small number. Hello, everybody. I haven't thank you everybody for spending your evening or afternoon or supper time, whatever, hanging out with little old me looking at silly nerd stuff on the internet. Um, there are some things that, as far as the future, I would really like to do regarding this. As I kind of mentioned, range is treated indirectly in Nova, but because we're on a virtual tabletop, I think, like, as much as I want to say just ignore range, pixels on a screen don't quite translate the same way to kind of sitting at the table and having a much more intuitive understanding of what the GM means when the GM says, this is near, this. It doesn't quite translate as well. So as much as Nova really doesn't want a grid, I want to be able to let the grid help us as much as possible. And I think, and that could come in the form of just the ruler. If nothing else, let's see, let me flip to a hex grid. That's a little bit more. I was doing some testing just last night, just to see what it would kind of look like. And this token right here, runner, was the one I was comparing against. And I was kind of seeing what would happen if if you were to draw a ruler out this many squares, and just kind of thinking it's of as hexagons, this wolf would mark near, or sorry, this wolf would mark close, Mystery Man would mark near, Toad would mark far, and everything beyond Toad would be beyond. That kind of makes sense. It's certainly not linear by any means. It's almost like increments. Your increments increase the further you get away, and I think that's the intention, is that if something's so far away, it doesn't matter, it's far. But if something, you need to differentiate close and near. Are you right there, or are you several steps away? That's where it matters. It doesn't matter when you're way far out there if you're way far out there or way far out there plus a couple steps away. Um, so, you know, colored rulers, kind of like I think it's rain drag ruler. Um, the D&D realm and D&D adjacent is similar, but just kind of showing as you drag this ruler, instead of saying 20 feet, simply saying near. And it is near up until here. And then all of a sudden it's far. And then that's just where you are. And so if you were to stand right here, I'm close to this guy and I'm close to this guy, but these guys are near to each other. Okay, that kind of somehow makes sense. So it's that kind of thing. I think that's one of the things I want to tackle, in addition to the variants, making the NPC variants, rather than just having a list of words, or even drop. No, I can't. You can't even drop them in there. But I think you can create a. Don't look at my secrets. I think you can create a link. And if you were to put a link in here, it okay. That's not bad. Maybe that's the better approach for variants in the short term. Is to grab them is to put their actor link directly into the description, so you can then just drag them out. I don't know. Better than nothing. I think that's about it. When I put out this system, I'll probably push out a beta right after this stream. For anybody that is interested in grabbing beta builds, it's pretty stable. I'm just missing some information, as you've seen, missing a few toggles or functionality. But actually, I don't think I got any errors this whole session. None, 0 errors. Heck yes. I was thinking of putting a homebrew Spark in a compendium, because I hate grabbing a system and, I don't have all the materials for it. I just want to kind of check it out. And then there is just nothing in the system to go on. Like, you have an empty actor sheet and go. And to be fair, I mean, there's a lot of systems are like that. This system is like that. It's just a character sheet and go. I can't provide you with the rules. You have to get them yourselves. I can't distribute art or these pre-built characters, but I can homebrew a Spark, making no promises as to how well it's put together narratively, mechanically, conceptually. I disavow all responsibility, but I can get a Spark in the compendium to act as an example, to show you how to do more complex modifications where, I don't know, you double the harm being applied, or you use the highest of your sun or shade stat to deal damage. All of that's totally possible because of the magic of of Foundry's roll formulas, roll formula terms. So that is a lot of disclaimers. I assume no responsibility for your GM saying, "Where in the hell did you find this?" Yeah. So I think I'm going to close it out there. Hour and a half is actually not so bad, given my tendency to ramble. So Library and Shinny Ray are helping me hash out this rainbow ruler. That'll be the code name. Because what I really want to happen, don't tell the audience. What I really want to happen is you click on a token, and you can pull up a token HUD mode. You click the targeting button or something, and your grid gets lightly colored according to the band that you're in. So the hexes right around your token would be, a light green, and then 3 spaces away, for the next 4, whatever your next range band is, it'll be like a yellow, and then I don't know, a red, whatever colors, as just a way to quickly see that's far, that's near, that's right here, and yeah, that's what I really want to happen. So if I can make a ruler change color, then I can color the whole damn screen. That's baby step. If I can change one hex, I can change every hex. And probably just assume that hexes are the default for this system, because let me look at my options. Oh yeah, I ain't got any. Deal with it. Things like swapping left and right click for default targets versus selected targets. That would be nice. Who's gonna make me a merge request for that? But those will be the kind of things. If I was to get if I was to get that rangefinder system, that would be a system setting that we would have somewhere. It's like, tell me how many squares are close, near, far, and beyond, and I'll do the rest. I'm done this time for real. I'd like to thank everybody who stopped by, everybody who happens to be watching this VOD at a future time, past time. Just thank you very much. I appreciate spending some time listening to me ramble, and listening to me talk about the things that I like making for this wonderful online platform that I have stumbled upon and fell deep into the deep end of. um, so yeah, I would like to do these more often. I have got a Warpgate stream that I need to finish. Part 2 of that would be the next stream. I don't know. Look for that in a month, maybe. Um, and I still need to give a Symbarum 5e retrospective because that is one of those modules I've put out recently that hacked 5e to pieces and didn't break entirely when the system updated and when V10 came out. So I need to figure out why it works so well. So I have a few more things to put out. As always, I appreciate any support that you show me on my coffee page, coffee.com/triadregion. Follow on my YouTube page. This will be posted up there as soon as it can encode and upload to YouTube, which now that I have new internet would be a little bit faster. But yeah, just keep an eye out for me. Try out my modules. Yell at me when they break. Break them, please. I like new and interesting modes of failure that brings a smile to my face more often than not. A clever way of breaking my module while doing something clever is just about the best bug report you can get. And with that, I'll talk to you all later, and enjoy Nova. It's great. Check it out.